Imagine for just a second that your body is like a smartphone.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right, so you just woke up, but instead of your battery being at 100%, you're sitting at like 10%.
Oh, wow. That's a rough start to the day.
Exactly. And you don't have a charger handy. But to make matters worse, there's this massive, really heavy app running in the background.
And you can't force quit it, right?
No, you absolutely cannot close it. It is just draining that tiny bit of battery you have left in a matter of minutes.
That is honestly an incredibly accurate way to visualize it.
Yeah, because that is basically the daily neurological reality of living with ataxia. It's that constant, exhausting drain.
It really puts the problem right into the physical reality of the day-to-day rather than just, medical theory.
Exactly. And today, we're going to look at why what you put on your plate is literally the only charging cable you have to keep that phone powered on.
Which is such a vital perspective shift.
It really is. And before we get too deep into the biology, I want to send a huge, really warm welcome to the entire Ataxia Comunidad.
Yes, absolutely. Hello to everyone listening.
If you're listening while making coffee or, commuting or just resting on the couch, get comfortable. We have a really profound deep dive ahead of us today.
One of those conversations that really makes you rethink your autopilot habits.
For sure. So to give everyone the context, this is the second installment of the educational series called The Importance of, which is produced by Paco Oliva, specifically for the Ataxia Comunidad channel.
And today's specific focus is the importance of nutrition.
Right. And what makes this source material so completely unprecedented, and I'd honestly say groundbreaking, is where it comes from.
Yeah, because we aren't just breaking down some clinical manual written by a neurologist who only sees ataxia from across a desk, right?
Exactly. Not through the cold lens of a lab. This content is built entirely from the inside. It's lived in the first person.
Because the author, Paco, is actually living with the condition himself. It's a fellow affected person.
Yeah, the whole text is grounded in real testimonies. It's trial and error. It's the frustration of a random Tuesday morning and, the victory of a really well-planned dinner.
And that insider perspective changes everything. It takes this from being just generic medical advice to an actual tactical survival manual.
Which is the core mission of our deep dive today. And I want to make the main premise super clear right from the start, because the text is wonderfully honest about this.
Right. The fact that nutrition does not cure ataxia.
Exactly. We are not here to talk about miracle diets. There are no magical smoothies here.
No, definitely not. But, and this is the huge paradigm shift, what you eat drastically alters how your body functions today, like literally this afternoon.
Yeah. In a condition where just taking a step or holding a fork demands a brutal amount of energy and coordination, the fuel you put in the tank matters immensely.
It changes the whole mindset. You aren't eating to alter your genetics long-term. You're eating to optimize your nervous system for the next 24 hours.
That's a great way to put it. So, to you listening, I want to throw this invitation out right now. If you hear something today that makes it click like why you felt so clumsy after lunch yesterday, please share this.
Yes, send it to a family member, a friend, anyone who needs to hear it.
Go to YouTube, Instagram, the Ataxia Comunidad Facebook page, and share this deep dive. This community exists so vital. Information doesn't just sit in a drawer.
Shared lived-in knowledge is the best adaptation tool we have.
So leave a comment, propose new topics, and let's keep growing this network. Now let's get into the hard biology.
Let's do it.
The text sets up what we can basically call the daily battlefield for someone with ataxia. And it highlights these three pillars that are always in tension.
Right, which are energy levels, neuromuscular control, and fatigue.
So to understand why food impacts those three so heavily, we need to unpack how the human body normally manages movement, right?
Yeah, we have to look at the neurotypical baseline. For someone without ataxia, balance and coordination are mostly subconscious.
Like running on autopilot.
Exactly. It's proprioception. Your cerebellum is back there doing complex calculus about where your foot is, gravity, muscle tension, and you just walk to the kitchen.
And the energy cost of that autopilot is really low, right?
Super low. It's highly efficient. But in ataxia, that autopilot is broken.
The neurological damage means the cerebellum just isn't processing those signals properly.
Right. So what does the brain do? It compensates. It hands that processing job over to the frontal lobe, to your conscious mind.
Oh, wow. So walking to the kitchen suddenly means you have to actively think about every single step.
Yes. You're thinking about how your heel strikes the floor, how your shoulders are balanced, and at a cellular level, that requires a massive amount of ATP.
Okay, let's unpack this ATP thing. That's the energy currency of our cells, right?
Exactly, it's the fuel. So instead of spending, say, 10 coins of ATP to stay upright, your conscious brain is suddenly spending thousands of coins a second.
Just to stand still.
Just to not fall over.
Let me make sure I'm getting the scale of this. Are you saying that a person with ataxia, just standing in line at the grocery store, is burning the same metabolic resources that a neurotypical person would use to, like, do algebra while juggling?
That is actually a really fair comparison. I mean, a resting brain already uses about 20% of the body's energy.
Wow, just at baseline.
Right. So when you are constantly, consciously compensating for a lack of balance, that energy drain skyrockets invisibly.
Which totally explains why the fatigue and ataxia isn't just being a little tired.
No, it's a deep, profound cellular exhaustion. Your ATP reserves are just being emptied at record speed.
That makes one of the quotes from the source material makes so much sense. I want to read this one. The person says, "It's not that I eat and my ataxia improves. It's that depending on what I eat, I function better or worse."
Which is such a crucial distinction.
Yeah, because if your body is burning fuel at this frantic pace just to stand up, and you put in bad fuel or not enough fuel, the engine is just going to sputter and fail.
It forces a total shift in how you view food. You move away from sick versus cured, and you move into functionality.
Food goes from being just a culinary preference to a literal operational decision.
Exactly. You are provisioning a high-demand system.
Which brings us right into part 2 of our deep dive. And this might be the most dangerous part of the day-to-day. The energy roller coaster.
Oh, the spikes and crash?
Yeah, if energy is our gold, our primary currency, we are bankrupting ourselves constantly without even realizing it. The text warns heavily against ultra-processed foods and sugar.
Because the mechanics of a sugar spike, glycemic spike, are fascinating, but also really destructive.
Walk us through what actually happens when you eat something like that.
So say you eat a highly processed pastry, right? The glucose hits your bloodstream like a tsunami. Sudden, massive energy.
But the body hates that kind of imbalance.
Exactly. So your pancreas panics and releases a flood of insulin to pull all that sugar out of your blood and shove it into your cells as fast as possible.
And then comes a crash, because the insulin does its job way too well.
Right. It sweeps the blood totally clean, and suddenly, an hour or two later, you have a severe energy drought. The reactive hypoglycemic crash.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here, or at least ask what I'm sure people are thinking.
Go for it.
Everyone gets a sugar crash.
Yeah.
If I eat a huge burger, fries, and a giant soda, I'm going to be practically comatose on the couch 2 hours later.
Right, the classic food coma.
So why is it so much worse for someone with ataxia? Like, why is this specific biological crash so dangerous for them?
I'm really glad you pushed back on that, because that clinical distinction is everything. For you as a neurotypical person, when your glucose drops, your brain powers down non-essential functions.
Okay, so I get sleepy. I can't focus on a book.
Yeah, you yawn, you feel lazy. But your cerebellum, that automatic pilot we talked about, has plenty of resilience. You can still walk straight to the bathroom even if you're half asleep.
Oh, I see.
But for someone with ataxia, the central nervous system is already redlining at 110% capacity just to keep them stable.
There are no non-essential functions to power down?
Exactly. Every drop of energy is being used to prevent a fall. So when that system gets a sudden fuel cutoff, the sugar crash, it doesn't just mean feeling sleepy. It's a total mechanical failure.
Wow. So their balance just goes offline.
Yes, balance worsens dramatically, fine motor coordination vanishes, clumsiness and tremors just multiply exponentially. The system has no buffer for voltage drops.
That is a terrifying analogy.
Oh.
If you drop the current, the lights immediately flicker.
Right. A sugar crash for you is a nap. A sugar crash for someone with ataxia is losing the ability to precisely control their legs for hours.
That brings up another quote from the text that is just, it's almost heartbreaking. Someone said, "There are days I don't know if I'm worse or I just ate badly."
That blurred line is so scary.
It has to be. Imagine thinking your disease is rapidly progressing, but really your nervous system is just having a brownout because of your lunch.
Which is why understanding this chemistry is so empowering. Instead of panicking and thinking, I'm declining, you can stop and ask, wait, what did I eat? Am I just crashing?
You trade fear for tactical control. And listener, this is where we really want to hear from you. Have you had these bad food days?
I'm sure so many people listening have experienced that exact confusion.
Definitely. Do you ever doubt if you're worsening or if it was just yesterday's menu catching up with you?
Yeah.
Go to the Ataxia Comunidad social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and drop your experience in the comments.
Validating that physical experience with a community is a massive part of managing a chronic condition.
It really is. When someone newly diagnosed reads your comment saying, yeah, sugar makes me trip over my own feet the next day, you're saving them so much mental anguish.
Absolutely. So we've covered the immediate energy spikes. That's your day-to-day, hour-to-hour management.
Right, the software of the body. But now we need to talk about the hardware.
The structural foundation, your muscle mass and weight management.
This is part 3 of our deep dive. Energy dictates your afternoon, but your muscle mass dictates your long-term stability. The author is super emphatic about this.
And it makes perfect biomechanical sense. Your muscles weren't just strings pulling your bones. They are your shock absorbers. They're your body's gyroscopes.
So when the neurological command center is sending weak or erratic signals about balance, your physical structure has to step up.
Exactly. If the muscles around your knees, your core, your hips are strong, they can mechanically compensate for a slight neurological misstep. They catch you before you fall.
But here is where the text points out a really common yet deadly mistake. And honestly, socially, it makes total sense why people do this.
You're talking about the extreme calorie restriction.
Yes. We live in this extreme diet culture where thin equals healthy. And if someone with ataxia is moving less because of fatigue or fear of falling, the logical leap is, I'm burning less, so I should eat like a bird to avoid gaining weight.
Which sounds logical, but it is a literal death trap for functionality.
Why is it so dangerous?
Because it completely ignores body composition and just focuses on the scale. When you severely restrict food, especially protein, your body goes into alarm mode.
It still needs energy to keep the organs running.
Right. And muscle tissue is metabolically very expensive to keep around, so if you aren't eating enough, your body starts eating its own muscles for fuel.
Oh, man. Sarcopenia.
Yes. Accelerated by inactivity, you are quite literally dismantling your own armor. You are breaking down your only remaining physical stabilizers.
So trying to stay thin is actually making you exponentially more fragile.
Exactly. If you have extreme low weight and no muscle mass, a minor fall that should just be a bruise can easily become a severe, complicated fracture.
Right.
You have no padding and no mechanical resistance.
That's the danger on one end of the spectrum. But the other extreme is just as bad, mechanically speaking, being overweight or obese.
Yes, the physics there are equally devastating.
If being underweight steals your armor, what does excess weight do to ataxia?
Think about the physics of walking. The nervous system is already struggling immensely to manage the body's center of gravity. Every single step requires micro-adjustments.
So what happens when you add, say, 40 extra pounds of inert weight?
You completely throw off the center of gravity. It's like asking someone who is already terrible at walking a tightrope to do it while wearing a backpack full of heavy rocks that swing around with every step.
The inertia just drags you down.
It drags you down, it destroys joints that are already suffering from an irregular gait, and most importantly, it multiplies your fatigue.
Right, because your heart and lungs have to work so much harder to move that extra mass, so your ATP burns out even faster.
Exactly, which is why the paradigm shift here is so fascinating. Managing your weight with ataxia is never, ever about aesthetics.
It's pure functionality. You're not trying to look good in a swimsuit. You're trying to stay operative.
You have to think like an engineer calibrating a machine. You can't be so light that you lack traction, and you can't be so heavy that you burn out the motors.
I love that. Anthropometry, functional at its finest. You're calibrating your balance.
Exactly.
There's a great real testimony here that grounds this perfectly. The person says, if I don't eat well, I notice it in my body. I lose control sooner.
I lose control sooner. That is the only metric that matters. Not the number on the scale, but what time in the afternoon your legs stop listening to you.
Exactly. So to delay that loss of control, we need to maintain muscle. But we also have to go to the root of the problem, the nervous system itself.
We have to look at the chemical environment we're bathing our nerves in every day.
Which brings us to part 4, nourishing the control center and managing inflammation. Now, the text lists specific nutrients, but makes sure to clarify that we aren't talking about herbal miracle cures.
Right, these aren't magic potions. They are the raw materials your nervous system needs for daily maintenance.
The text highlights B vitamins, omega-3s, and magnesium. So let's break down the mechanics. How do B vitamins actually help?
So think of your nerves like electrical wires. A copper wire has plastic insulation, so the electricity travels fast and doesn't leak out. Your nerves have a biological insulation called myelin.
Okay, the myelin sheath.
Yes. B vitamins, especially B12, are critical for synthesizing and maintaining that myelin. In a neurological disease, the signal is already compromised. If you also have a B vitamin deficiency, your myelin degrades.
Meaning the signal travels even slower or gets lost completely.
Exactly. Taking B vitamins won't magically regrow a damaged cerebellum, but it ensures that the peripheral wires carrying the signals to your legs are in the best possible conductive state.
It's like cleaning the battery contacts. Doesn't fix a broken engine, but it makes sure the spark gets through.
Perfect analogy.
What about omega-3s and magnesium?
Well, omega-3s found in fatty fish, walnuts, flax seeds are powerful systemic anti-inflammatories, but crucially, they cross the blood-brain barrier.
So they get directly into the brain.
Right. And they help keep the cell membranes of your neurons fluid, making it easier for neurotransmitters to jump from one cell to the next.
And magnesium.
Magnesium is a natural modulator. It acts as a blocker for excitation receptors in the brain. It physically calms the peripheral nervous system, which helps reduce spasms, cramps, and allows for actual muscle relaxation.
It's so helpful to understand the actual biochemistry. It takes these things out of the realm of like generic magazine advice and makes it real.
It really does.
But if omega-3s are reducing inflammation to help the brain, that implies there's inflammation actively making things worse.
Oh, absolutely. And Paco's text points directly at the massive hidden enemy, highly inflammatory diets.
The text mentions incredibly debilitating physical sensations, sluggishness, heaviness, and just crushing brain fog.
We have to explain how cellular inflammation works because it's not just feeling bloated after a big meal.
Right, it's way deeper than that.
When you constantly eat ultra-processed foods, refined oils heated to high temperatures, excess added sugars, your immune system doesn't recognize them as food. It treats them as low-level invaders.
So the immune system attacks your lunch.
Basically, it triggers an immune response, releasing inflammatory proteins called cytokines into your bloodstream.
And those cytokines make it to the brain.
They go everywhere. Think of the pathways from your brain to your limbs as a highway. Systemic inflammation is like dumping mud, gravel, and debris all over that highway.
Oh, man.
The nerve impulse can still get through, but it has to drastically reduce speed, swerve around potholes, and the brakes don't work right.
So physically, the person with ataxia feels like gravity just got turned up, like they're moving underwater.
Exactly. The cytokines interfere with synaptic efficiency and inflame the joint capsules.
That muddy highway analogy is brilliant. It perfectly explains this quote from the text. There are days I feel clumsier, and it often coincides with eating worse.
Right. The person hasn't suddenly degenerated overnight. They're just trying to drive their nervous system through a swamp of inflammatory mud that they created with their diet.
It's a direct biological response to the internal friction from that food, which leads us to the ripple effects. Because if you have inflammation and blood sugar spikes, and your stomach is fighting to digest a heavy processed meal at 10 p.m., the disaster spreads.
The domino effect is huge, and it hits the most crucial recovery tool you have, your sleep.
Yes, part 5. Sleep, cognition, and swallowing. Let's start with a vicious cycle of poor sleep.
Sleep isn't just resting for someone with a neurological disease. It is a highly active, vital repair process.
Like the brain is actually working hard while you're asleep.
Exactly. During deep sleep and REM, your brain consolidates motor memory, meaning it saves what it learned today about keeping you balanced. It also activates the glymphatic system.
Which is literally the brain's waste clearance system, right? Washing out the toxins.
Yes. But if you eat a really heavy, fatty meal right before bed,
your body is stuck digesting instead of sleeping.
Right. It diverts massive amounts of blood and energy to your GI tract. Your stomach turns into a furnace working at maximum capacity.
Raising your core temperature and keeping your nervous system on alert.
Exactly. It makes it physiologically impossible to enter those deep, restorative sleep phases because your body is fighting a digestive battle.
And the text lays down a rule that seems absolute. In ataxia, sleeping badly equals worsening absolutely everything the next day.
Without exception. If that nightly brainwash doesn't happen, you wake up in a neurological deficit. Before your feet even touch the floor, your fatigue threshold is halved, and your processing speed is compromised.
It's like starting a marathon carrying a 20-pound backpack because you didn't empty it the night before.
Exactly. You are set up for failure.
And another thing from the text that fascinates and terrifies me is the concept of cognitive fatigue from food. the food coma.
Right, postprandial somnolence.
We established earlier that standing up with ataxia requires conscious concentration. So if food makes you sleepy, it's literally stealing the concentration you need to not fall over.
That is the exact causal chain. When you eat a massive carb-heavy meal, blood rushes to your stomach, and the insulin spike pushes tryptophan into your brain.
Which turns into serotonin and melatonin, the sleep hormones.
Right. So if your ability to stay upright depends on you actively paying attention to your posture, any food that dulls your mental sharpness puts you at imminent risk of a fall.
There's a quote that just nails this reality. After eating heavy, I'm not the same. Everything is harder.
That extra difficulty is your conscious brain fighting off the sleep chemicals you just generated while simultaneously trying to recalculate the position of your knees.
It's a complete system overload. But, and I want to take a serious pause here, we've been talking a lot about what to eat: digestion, nutrients, sugar.
Right.
But Paco Oliva's text ventures into a mechanical territory that is much more complex and intensely dangerous. We have to talk about how to eat when the physical act of eating starts to fail.
Yes, we need to discuss dysphagia.
This is one of the most critical, medically urgent realities for some people with ataxia, right?
It really is. Dysphagia is, simply put, the difficulty in swallowing safely and effectively.
Can you describe the actual anatomy of swallowing for us? Because for someone without dysphagia, it's something we do thousands of times a day without a single thought. What is actually failing?
Swallowing is one of the most complex biomechanical feats in the human body. It requires the microscopic coordination of over 20 muscles and cranial nerves.
Just to swallow a sip of water.
Yes,
Yeah.
Imagine it. You chew the food into a bolus, your tongue pushes it back, and in that exact millisecond, your larynx has to lift up, and a tiny cartilage flap called the epiglottis has to swing down.
Like a piano lid closing.
Exactly. It seals off your airway completely. If it closes perfectly, the food or liquid slides right over it and down the esophagus into your stomach.
But in ataxia, the conductor of that orchestra, the cerebellum, is misfiring.
Right. Ataxia destroys the timing. The signal to close that airway flap arrives just a fraction of a second too late or without enough force.
It's completely uncoordinated.
So if the airway isn't sealed when the food or liquid passes through, part of it drops down into your trachea and straight into your lungs.
It's just called aspiration. And the consequences of that aren't just a simple cough, are they?
A cough is your reflex defense, sure. But if the aspiration is continuous, or if it's silent aspiration, where you don't even cough, the bacteria from the food or your mouth starts multiplying in your lungs.
Leading to aspiration pneumonia.
Yes, which is one of the leading causes of severe hospitalization for patients with advanced ataxia.
So the danger is absolutely maximum. How do you solve this in the day-to-day? The text talks about adapting textures. And I want to focus on liquids first, because intuitively, people think water is the easiest thing to swallow.
Right, but it's actually the exact opposite.
Why is plain water so dangerous?
It's pure fluid dynamics. Clear water has very low viscosity. It moves incredibly fast and splashes everywhere uncontrollably in the mouth and throat.
So if your airway flap is a millisecond late,
The water slips right in before the door even starts to close. Plus, water doesn't strongly stimulate the sensory receptors in the back of the throat.
meaning your brain might not even realize it's there in time to trigger the swallow reflex.
Exactly. It's too fast and too stealthy.
So that's why they use medical thickeners.
Yes. When you add a thickening powder to water or juice, you change its physics. You turn it into a nectar or honey consistency.
To move slower.
It moves much slower down the throat, giving the damaged neurological system enough time to react and close the airway. And because it stays cohesive, it doesn't splash into the lungs.
It's literally applying physics to survive.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with solid food, right? Moving to pureed diets.
Mm.
But the author raises a massive red flag here.
Oh, the nutritional trap of adapted textures.
Yeah, if you just blend everything, you run a severe nutritional risk. Why is that?
It's a very frustrating clinical paradox. When a patient switches to purees and thickened liquids, the volume of the food is artificially inflated with lots of added water to blend it.
So it looks like a big meal.
But it's mostly water. The patient feels full quickly, or they just get exhausted from the effort of eating long before they've consumed enough actual calories.
So they enter a chronic deficit of calories and protein.
Exactly. And that loops us right back to part 3. Severe weight loss, muscle wasting, sarcopenia, and the rapid worsening of their physical stability.
Wow. So the real challenge with dysphagia isn't just making the puree safe to swallow. It's making sure that puree is an absolute nutritional bomb.
Right. It needs to be dense with proteins and healthy fats so that even just a few spoonfuls truly nourish the patient.
And honestly, because of the emotional, technical, and just culinary complexity of dealing with dysphagia, I want to make a third super vital call to our community right now.
This is so important.
Trying to navigate dysphagia alone, trying to guess which thickener doesn't taste like chalk, or how to make pureed chicken not feel like depressing hospital food every single day, it is heartbreaking.
It is incredibly isolating.
This is exactly why the Ataxia Comunidad on YouTube and Facebook is a lifeline. If you have adapted recipes or natural tricks for thickening liquids, or if you just want to ask, how do you guys handle coughing while drinking? Ask it.
Go to the comments and interact.
Because behind those screens, there are hundreds of people in their own kitchens all over the world who have already solved the exact problem you are crying over today. Join the conversation. It literally saves lives and restores dignity.
I always say the collective intelligence of patients and caregivers is years ahead of the clinical manuals when it comes to daily quality of life.
I completely agree. So after this massive deep dive, we've mapped out all the risks. We've talked about glycemic spikes, losing your muscle armor, the muddy highway of inflammation, sleep, and the physics of swallowing.
It can sound really overwhelming at first glance.
It can. But the brilliance of Paco Oliva's text is that it doesn't leave us stranded with the diagnosis. It hands us an operational manual for daily life.
Actionable, practical solutions.
Exactly. Part 6. What actually works?
Yeah.
But before we get to the do's, let's quickly debunk the don'ts. The mistakes people make out of pure desperation.
The first one is incredibly human. Chasing the miracle diet.
Oh, right.
When you have a progressive disease with no cure, anyone promising you can reverse symptoms in 30 days with a special diet becomes irresistible. But the text and science are clear. They don't exist.
Extreme, highly restrictive diets usually just cause severe deficiencies. They strip you of nutrients and add the emotional trauma of constantly failing a diet.
Exactly. Selling false hope in exchange for malnutrition.
The second mistake we already covered. Starving yourself out of fear of gaining weight and losing your muscle mass in the process.
But the third mistake from the text is probably the most psychologically insidious one.
The apathy. The learned helplessness.
Right, the mindset of, well, I have a severe genetic condition, so it doesn't matter if I eat donuts and pizza every day or a salad, I'm going to get worse anyway.
Why is that biological surrender so false?
Because you might not control the decade-long progression of your cerebellum, but you absolutely 100% control your cellular inflammation, your muscle mass, and your ATP levels for this afternoon.
Eating poorly isn't an act of rebellion against the disease. It's sabotaging your own body for tomorrow.
Precisely.
So, to stop the sabotage, let's look at the playbook. Let's trace a functional day based on this text. You wake up, we know we want to avoid that inflammatory brain fog. What's the very first operational step?
It's so basic that people ignore it. Early, intelligent hydration. Drink fluids before you even eat.
But why is water specifically so critical for coordination and ataxia? Everyone says drink water, but it usually sounds like generic fitness influencer advice.
Because it directly dictates your blood volume. If you wake up mildly dehydrated, your blood volume is low, your blood pressure drops, and blood flow to the brain is reduced.
Which for a neurotypical person just means a mild headache.
Right. But for an ataxic brain, that reduced flow massively exacerbates dizziness and unsteadiness when you stand up. Plus, your cerebrospinal fluid, the shock absorber for your brain and spine, needs hydration.
And the synovial fluid in your joints.
Exactly. Your joints are under immense mechanical stress from an irregular walking pattern. Water is your very first physical stabilizer of the day.
Okay, so we're hydrated. The day moves on. The text gives a super clear rule here. Eat regularly. Don't skip meals or binge at dinner. What's the metabolic logic there?
It's the anti-roller coaster strategy. If you eat moderate, frequent portions, you give your body a highly predictable, constant flow of energy.
No insulin tsunamis.
Exactly. The sugar goes up gently and down gently. Your brain gets a steady electrical current to do its thousands of calculations, and you completely avoid that afternoon crash that leaves you trembling on the sofa.
And what should those meals look like? The text emphasizes, prioritize protein.
Because protein is the brick and mortar of your muscle armor.
Right. Chicken, fish, eggs, well-tolerated legumes. The body doesn't store protein for later like it does with fat, so you have to drip feed it constantly.
And alongside those bricks, you avoid excess sugar and ultra-processed food.
Which doesn't mean you can never have a slice of cake at a birthday party. Mental health matters too.
Exactly. It just means those foods cannot be your baseline. If you pull them out of your daily routine, you instantly sweep the inflammatory mud off your neural highway.
But there is one piece of advice in here that I think is the wisest, but also the hardest to implement, because it requires you to change your relationship with yourself.
Listening actively to your body.
Yes.
Yes.
The text essentially demands that you become a private investigator of your own digestion and symptoms.
And this is crucial because human nutrition isn't universal math. Bio-individuality is real.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, a bowl of whole grain oatmeal might be fantastic steady energy for one ataxia patient, but for another, maybe they have a slight intolerance or a different microbiome, and that oatmeal causes heavy digestion that steals their energy for 3 hours.
So listening to your body means keeping a mental or even physical log.
Yes. I ate this lentil stew, and an hour later I felt too heavy to stand. Noted. That food costs me more energy to digest than it gives me.
You have to put in the work. No doctor can audit how your body feels inside. Only you can. Which connects perfectly to the last real testimony I want to pull from the text.
It's a great quote.
It really sums up the whole effort. The person says, "It doesn't cure me, but it gives me better days."
And that is the ultimate victory.
Right. In the face of a severe chronic illness, accumulating better days is the absolute metric of success.
A day with less muscle heaviness? A day without extreme tremors from a sugar crash? A day where your mind is clear enough to just enjoy a conversation with a friend? That is a colossal triumph that you manufactured yourself through food.
So if we take a massive step back and look at everything we've covered today, from ATP to glucose, from muscle armor to the muddy highway, from swallowing physics to sleep hygiene, how do you synthesize all of this?
I would synthesize it by saying that ataxia steals a lot of the subconscious control from your body. It turns daily life into constant crisis management, where every single movement is incredibly expensive.
So food can't just be an afterthought.
Exactly. In a state of hyperconsumption of resources, nutrition stops being a passive pleasure and becomes your primary tactical weapon. It's your frontline logistics. Understanding how fuel impacts your specific machine is the most direct, immediate way to optimize whatever parts of your nervous and muscular system are still working.
That is perfectly said. And to bring all this science, all this strategy, back to your emotional reality, to you listening on the other side, I want to close out today with the final thought Paco Oliva leaves us with.
It's such a profound statement.
It is deeply provocative. And I want you to really chew on this, let it echo in your mind over the next few days, especially the next time you sit down and look at your plate. The text concludes with this unwavering declaration. I can't choose to have ataxia, but I can choose with what body I face it every day.
It is the ultimate antidote to that apathy and learned helplessness we talked about earlier.
It is a total and absolute reclamation of power. You didn't control your genetics. You didn't control the mutation or the injury. It is a wildly unfair hand you were dealt.
Absolutely unfair.
But the protein you choose to chew to maintain the muscle holding you up, the water you drink to hydrate your brain, the choice to walk away from the sugar spike that will paralyze you this afternoon. Those are your weapons.
Taking control of your plate is an act of rebellion.
It's sovereignty over your own physical form. You are deciding to build the most armored, efficient vehicle possible, to travel a road you already know is going to be incredibly hard. And that control belongs entirely to you.
Transforming a body that feels like a prison into a body that is, as much as possible, built to resist. It is scientifically valid and deeply inspiring.
We have covered so much dense ground today. I really want to thank you for walking through this with us, for giving us your attention, and for being willing to view your reality through this lens. It's been an honor to share this time with you.
It has been a massive privilege to help break down the biological context of the real lived wisdom of this community.
And as we wrap up, I want to send the warmest, most sincere farewell to the entire Ataxia Comunidad. This is why existing in a community is your greatest lifeline.
The benefits are truly incalculable.
Because the knowledge that saves you isn't always in a medical journal. Sometimes it's a cooking trick from a stranger on Facebook. Sometimes it's an Instagram video of someone explaining how they beat morning fatigue. Or a YouTube comment from someone who just says, I understand, me too.
Exactly.
So please follow the channels, subscribe, comment, and share this deep dive. Keep the information flowing, because the more we share, the stronger everyone gets.
And remember.
Yes, remember this above all else, no matter how hard the day is or how heavy the neurological burden feels, absolutely nobody has to live this alone. We are right here, Sending you all a huge hug, take incredibly good care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.